I'm joined by the wonderful Grammy-nominated composer, pianist, musical social activist, I guess you could say. Carlos Simon has joined me to talk about his new album, which is called Together. It's coming out around the world via Decca Classics. Carlos, welcome and thanks for spending time with us here on FM 91.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Let's talk about your youth and growing up. You were a son of a preacher and you were raised in Atlanta. Can you tell us about how that experience growing up sort of inflected your later choices as a composer and pianist?
Well, growing up in my dad's church, the denomination is the Black Pentecostal in the South. And so if you know anything about this tradition, it's very energetic, it's spontaneous. And it's a tradition that has been in my family for over 100 years now. My grandfather was a preacher, my great grandfather was a preacher, and so my dad sort of took the helm on and sort of started a church in Atlanta, and so it felt natural to be in this family tradition, and I learned the power of community. I also learned the power of music and how it really helps, people every week, just to be a part of that. And that part of the giving back every single week. And, one of the things that was instilled into me at an early age is that, someone needs you, for, because you are the musician for this service, and someone is coming every week for some sense of solace, some peace, to church. And that's something that I take with me in my composing. As I'm writing, I'm always sort of thinking, how can this help someone else? And that's what I do whenever I write a piece of music.
When did you get into classical music and decide you wanted to be a composer? I mean, and what did your dad think of that?
Yeah, it was. He was terrified. He didn't, and my mom especially. So it's even though music is such a huge part of my family heritage, I'm the first person in my family to pursue music as a profession, and it was terrifying for them. And but it was something I really felt deeply that I wanted to pursue. Um, being well, playing gospel music is and going into classical music was something I fell into. However, I studied music theory in college, and I knew I had a really good ear because I could play anything I heard just by ear. I didn't read music for until later in high school, and that process of learning to read music and using my ear, it really helped me. And so when I got to started learning music theory, I was learning the process and then learning names to chords and that I already knew, so it was sort of an eye opener. The world was sort of technicolor. So um, I I wouldn't look back. I wouldn't do it. I would do it again, all over again, if I had the choice. So it's been a journey, but I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the album and the collaborators that you have on this disc in particular. Of course, you're at the piano for some of these works, but you also have an incredible cast of performers. I wonder if you could just sort of go down the list and talk about each of the people who helped make it come to fruition.
Sure. Well, these are all friends. I think that's the most important thing I want to say about it. And one of the reasons why I want to do the project in itself, because composing can be a very lonely profession. I'm in the room by myself writing the music, and um, the act of performing the pieces. I'm not in that process usually, um, but I wanted to bring my closest friends, my collaborators, into one room and just and create music. And so, all of these people we connect on some level, whether it's church or whether they, started by playing by ear like me, and then got into classical music. Or like for instance, like Randall Goosby, we both love sneakers. We love Jordans, and so we all have a certain similarity or commonality, and music has to be one of them. Happens to be one of them. So Janae Bridges, she grew up in church, in the AME church, and grew up singing hymns, and so that's just why you get the song "Near the Cross." This arrangement that we did. And it's a hymn that I would hear every Sunday and play, and she would too. So it made sense for us to record that and do an arrangement of it. Then we have "Amazing Grace," played by Randall Goosby, who again is a phenomenal violinist in his own right, and is really making strides in the classical world. And so we wanted to do something that speaks to the time. So "Amazing Grace" is a hymn that it's 250 years this year,
Mm.
and was written by a former slave owner, but he wrote this song, so it seemed um, appropriate to look back and to do this arrangement. And Seth Parker Woods and Will Liverman, these are people again that grew up in church, and we've had that commonality. Will Liverman, he's singing "Angels in Heaven" and "Unsigned My Name." This is another song that I heard in church all the time, and so I did a string arrangement, and I'm conducting the piece, and he's singing the work, and yeah, so it's a project that again includes my friends, even down to the string orchestra. I knew every single person in the orchestra. I handpicked them, and I hope my hope is that you feel the love and you feel the energy when you listen to the recordings.
We've had violinist Randall Goosby here performing with Toledo Symphony, and I've spoken with him a few times. But you also have some local roots, I guess you would say, in the University of Michigan.
Absolutely. I did my doctorate in music composition in Ann Arbor, 2017 through 20. Well, I finished in 2017, and it was my first time living outside of Atlanta, moving to the Midwest. So
Now's your chance for a shout out if you want to
ab-
say hello.
abs- absolutely. So go blue. My time at the University of Michigan was special, and I am so grateful for that time. And go blue.
All right. The album is called Together, and it's very intimate, and it's a collection of wonderful arrangements and wonderful contributions from your friends, as you say. What is the overall message for you that you want to get out with the album? Because you're known as somebody who always has a message to their music. What is the message of Together? I mean, the title kind of says what it is, but what does it mean to you?
Well, I always heard the scripture, iron sharpens iron, right? And I think that um, having like-minded people around you and building a tribe that will um, push you and to encourage you and to have people in your life that will inspire you to be your best self. And that was the intent of the album, just to be around people who are doing amazing things in their own right, in their own world, and bringing them into the room, and so we can collectively um, spread the message of it's better to be together, and to be around people who can make you a better person, and inspire you to be your best self.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope people will get out of the album.
Tell us a little bit about some of the tracks that have a specific kind of autobiographical element. I'm thinking of the one about, or that you dedicated to your grandmother, one of her favorite hymns. Can you talk about that for us?
Sure. Yeah. Well, that my grandmother, she suffered from Alzheimer's, and she was this very vibrant woman, very flamboyant and I mean, she walked into the room and the life would just come. It was just it was amazing, and to see her suffer, and after a while, she lost her personality, and it wasn't the same woman that I knew. And but every time I saw her, and there was a piano in the room, she would encourage me to. She would get a hymn book out and say, "Oh, play this hymn, and play Great is Thy Faithfulness, or play Near the Cross." But at one point, toward the end, she was always go and ask me to play When He Calls Me, I Will Answer, this hymn. And that was her favorite hymn. And so when I saw that she was sort of declining, and the doctors were saying that she didn't have much time left, I made a point to record this work and play it for her, and as a sense of sort of traveling music, and um, so this song it's appropriate. When He calls me, I will answer. I'll be somewhere working for my Lord. And those are the words to the hymn, and it's special for me because when she finally transitioned, that music was playing, and so on the album I call it traveling music. Um, so that's the story with that particular piece, and I hope that she made it to that special place where she is.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, it seems that family and maybe a sense of religion certainly are important to you, but that sense of family that you've talked about with the performers on this recording and also your own personal experience, that's a message that I think can transcend, cultures and races and all kinds of things to be just a human message that you're sending out into the world.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons I am a musician and a composer. I feel led, to spread good news. And that comes with my family tradition. No, I'm not a preacher, but I certainly use music as a message, as a opportunity to spread good news.
You say you're not a preacher, but the music on this album is arranged in such a way that you can listen to it all back to back and all the pieces and feel like you've gone to church a little bit when you listen to it. It's really lovely.
Well, amen to that.
Amen. I wonder, just before I let you go, if you could just mention the new recording that's coming out of the piece that you did with the Minnesota Orchestra for the George Floyd protests and for his memory and legacy. I wonder if you can talk about that. It's called Breadth, but the D is in parentheses, so it says breath, it says breathe. There are other words that go into the libretto. I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about that piece before I let you go.
Sure. Well, the piece was commissioned by the Minnesota Orchestra in 2021, and we spent a good part of 2 years basically going back and forth to the Twin Cities, and speaking with local artists, speaking with folks who were on the ground during those protests, speaking to members of George Floyd's family, and my collaborator and I, Mark Lamuthi Joseph, we wanted to create something that um, that really spoke to the larger issue. Yes, George Floyd was murdered, and we all know that it was something that we saw from around the world, all over the world. But it's only this is something that's been happening for centuries. The killings of Black people, and we wanted to talk about that, but also talk about what comes after that. What is the collective task that we all have? in creating a anti-racist world. So if racism is systematic, then anti-racism also has to be systematic. And it takes all of us to do that. And no matter what our professions are. And that's something that we talk about within the piece. So it's not just about George Floyd, even though this was a catalyst, for the piece. But it's more than just that. And that's why we took the project on and wanted to write this work.
Yeah. Well, it's really effective listening to it, and the words and the music are so inspiring. So congratulations to you on both of these recordings.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending time with us today. The Grammy-nominated composer and performer Carlos Simon, whose new album Together from Decca Classics and also coming out is a recording with the Minnesota Orchestra of Breadth. Thank you so much, Carlos, for joining us here on FM 91.
Thank you so much for having me.